I'm Whitney Baker, coach, facilitator, meditation teacher, and writer. Electric Ideas is for women, especially mothers, who are done disappearing inside their responsibilities. If you're holding everything together but running on empty or feeling disconnected from your needs and desires, this is a place to come back to yourself. If you're ready to feel alive again in the messy middle of real life, you're in the right place. Let's spark something. Welcome back to Electric Ideas. I'm your host, Whitney Baker. It is so common for women, especially mothers, to get stuck in cycles of putting everyone else first and making choices based on what they feel like they should do or what life should look like. That's why I'm so excited to welcome Emilie Karun to the show today for a conversation, because we are super aligned on how important it is to learn self-trust, learn how to listen to what feels good to you, not just live an existence based on what looks good on paper, but actually designing your life in a soul-fed, satisfying way, and trust that it's not only good for you, but for everybody you encounter as you continue to expand and find ways to contribute your gifts in the world. Emilie is a life coach and founder of the Good Girl Revolution, where women learn how to stop playing by the world's rules and instead trust and lead themselves towards the life they really want. This is an important, empowering conversation. I know you're going to have a lot of great takeaways and be inspired on the other end of listening. So let's dive in. Hi, Emilie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
You talk a lot about good girl conditioning, these, I would say, invisible rules that many women follow, perhaps without questioning. How can we start recognizing that we are potentially being impacted by those rules?
Well, the good girl path to success, as I like to call it, is if we think about it when we're very young, we are taught to behave in a certain way. Historically, women are trained for goodness to get power. And by that, I mean, we learn that if we make other people happy, we get a smiley face, we get a gold star, we do the right things in the right way, and then we'll be rewarded. And so we learn how to impress other people, do things that are expected of us over what we desire to be, do, or have. We learn to shape ourselves into this tiny little box of what's acceptable. And then we think if we do, we'll kind of get the gold star. So recognizing all of the places where we're doing things that we have to or should do, these become a place to notice what is the rule I'm following. Noticing our guilt, noticing our frustration, our emotions can be great indicators to guide us back to where we're doing things that maybe we don't want to do or that aren't really from our soul or from ourselves, but from something we think we have to do.
That is a great base layer for us to get into this conversation. I'm going to circle back to some of the things that you said, but just to paint a picture for my community, I know that you had a time in your own life where things look great on paper, right down to maybe a white picket fence, literally, family, kids, but something didn't sit with you, with your soul. Can you
Yeah.
tell us about this time of reckoning for yourself?
Yeah. So all I ever wanted was to be a stay-at-home mom. I had, like I said, white picket fence dreams. I just wanted to marry my high school sweetheart. I went to college, got a degree, but couldn't wait to quit my career so I could have babies and live happily ever after. And I did that. I got everything I ever wanted. I have a wonderful husband. I have 4 beautiful kids, and I'm a stay-at-home mom. And it was like my probably early 30s. I had this life that just wasn't as beautiful, didn't feel as beautiful as I thought it would. It was everything I wanted. It was everything that was so enviable. Everyone would say, "Oh, you're so lucky. You have all of these things." But something was profoundly missing. And I think what I've come to realize is that while I did want all of those things, I wanted so much more that I failed to recognize. I wanted a much bigger life. I wanted different things that I didn't know were allowed or didn't even recognize within myself. And so I had this existential crisis of feeling like, God, everything that was supposed to be enough wasn't. And what kind of selfish, greedy monster did that make me? Did that mean I didn't love my kids? If I thought being a stay-at-home mom and sacrificing all of yourself and giving up your dreams for them made you the best mother in the world, and I now wanted something different than that, did that mean I was a terrible mother? And that really kicked off a rough few years of searching for answers to questions that I didn't even think to ask for a very long time.
I think it's really inconvenient when
So
you listen,
inconvenient.
right? Like when
Yeah.
you hear it, like listening to the truth, like you probably knew that at some level for a long time and just like almost didn't want to know it because it's like, it's not handy when you're like, okay, gotta
No.
change.
Yeah, and this is why I'm so passionate about it's why I started my blog, which ultimately very quickly turned into a business. Because when I was at the height of these questions, there was this little author, you may have heard of her, called Glennon Doyle. She's actually, obviously she's a big, big author and speaker these days. But back in my day, she was a blogger and she wasn't famous. And I'd found her blog. And what she did for me was to just normalize what I was feeling. For her writing about how motherhood was so much harder than she thought it was. And she named the pain that I thought I was supposed to swallow. And she talked openly about just motherhood is hard, not because you're doing it wrong, but because you're doing it right. And that doesn't make you bad or greedy and things that no one was saying. That to me became a crack of light for me to explore. Maybe I wasn't a terrible mother for wanting more or not loving this the way I thought that I would, or that feeling that something was missing. That became such a huge lifeline for me. And that tiny little crack of light allowed me to actually go further into my own journey. So that's why I'm just obsessed with talking about this because the more women hear other women say, me too, absolutely. Motherhood is hard, wanting more, all of this to reduce the shame and the guilt, all of it. That is such a huge part of normalizing that. So that was a huge piece for me. And it gave me permission to go on a quest that I had never done, to ask questions of myself that I didn't know I was allowed to.
I like that image of that crack, almost like letting the light in, the
Yep.
truth in. I
Mhm.
think a lot of women that I've seen in my communities have an immediate sense of comparing, like, well, this is like my life is good. I've got so much to be grateful for. Who am I
Oh,
to
yeah.
want more?
I'm gonna get on my soapbox now because we're taught not to want. We're taught not to desire. We're taught to ask for the bare minimum and be grateful and thankful as if wanting more negates what we already have. We can be profoundly grateful for the life we have and still want more. And in fact, I would argue that that is a reflection of wanting to make the most of this one wild and precious life. To say, I'm an ever expanding being in an ever expanding universe that is always growing. And it is my birthright and natural design to actually keep looking for more ways to live more fully, to express more fully, to enjoy more fully. And anything that tells you shouldn't or not probably benefits from you staying silent and staying small and staying exactly where you are.
Speak. Well said.
Yeah.
I couldn't
Yeah.
I I couldn't agree more. And something I tell my clients is like if you sense that there's more out for you, that's probably because there is, it's you just have to
100%.
open up to it. I think it's overwhelming, especially when you are in midlife and you've got kids and many people have work or they're figuring out what's next for their contribution to know where to start listening. How did you find the courage in your journey? And then where do you see clients have breakthroughs in terms of moving from, okay, I have this awareness that there's more lurking
Hmm.
to actually trying to start claiming that more and seeing that more?
Yeah. Well, definitely the first part is letting that light in whatever way it comes to you. And I would agree 100%. If you think you're meant for more, you are. If it feels like something is missing, it is. Usually what's missing is you in your own life. Actually, what you want, what you need, that is usually the missing piece. And if it feels like everything should be fine but it isn't and I don't know what it is, pay attention to that desire. Your desire can be trusted. Your desires are divine. Your longing is there to get you to start asking different questions. So, trusting that desire, paying attention even to your emotions. For me, a big one was resentment. Resentment shows us where we are violating our own boundaries, where we are denying our own needs. Jealousy, who do you admire? Who triggers you? Even if you don't like them or don't want to be like them, if there's another woman who kind of really bothers you, there's a reason for it. That's information. If you feel sadness, loneliness, depression, these are all indicators from your soul that something is out of alignment with what you really want and how you're living your life. So paying attention to those things and not just dismissing them. We have gotten so good, not only good, but rewarded for denying and dismissing our own needs. We will literally have to go to the bathroom and be like, oh, I can't. I'm too busy right now. I'm hungry. No, I'm too fat. I can't eat. I'm tired. There's work to be done. Our inner self, our highest self is always speaking to us and leading us. And we can't listen in the most basic bodily functions. We have no chance of actually aligning with our soul's highest desire. So the first thing is to pay attention. Pay attention to what you want. Pay attention to what makes you angry. Pay attention to what you desire. And then start noticing how you respond to those desires. Create some separation, some awareness between your thoughts and who you really are. You are not your thoughts. And if you can start observing them and noticing the way you talk to yourself, your inner voice, how you interact with those stories and desires and things that you want, that voice, start questioning that voice that says, I can't, this makes me a bad person. I already have too much of all of that bullshit. When you start questioning that, I want you to ask yourself, whose voice is this? Is it
Mm.
my father's? Is it my pastor's? Is it my, like, where did I hear this? Is this actually true? Or is it something that someone somewhere told me it was true? Or maybe you can't even name an individual, but collectively, society has a very strong opinion about what a woman should and shouldn't be, and especially a mother and a working mother. There's a lot of opinions. And so just step back and say, is this actually true? Start challenging those things, because a lot of the times it's true because we perpetuate it. But if there's an exception to that rule, I always think of looking at those beliefs as, like, if you were cross examining it in a courtroom, you can find the slightest crack in this. One of the kind of most famous stories that I've shared over the years was that I was doing a training on why we shouldn't have guilt, because guilt, I'm going to go on my guilt rant here for a second, but it's related. Guilt is when we are not doing something we think we should, or we aren't doing something that we're doing something we think we shouldn't, right? There's this violation of a should. But if we write up, make all of our own rules and we decide what matters to us, then there's no guilt. Because if I'm deciding what matters to me and then I'm living in accordance with that, I don't have any guilt because I've written those rules. And so I was giving this example when I was teaching this to years ago about how I do not volunteer in my kids' classroom. There was a time where I felt a lot of guilt around that. A good mom should volunteer in her kids' classroom. A good mom should show up in this certain way. And for a while, I would either do it and hate it and not want to do it, or I wouldn't do it, but then I would beat myself up and feel guilty because I wasn't there. And when I started writing my own rules and when I started deciding what was important to me, I recognized that that example was based on the idea that a good mom should do this. But when I started examining that belief, well, is it true that you can be a good mom without volunteering in your kids' classroom? I was like, of course. Can I think of a million examples of mothers? My own mother, for example, who was the breadwinner and working. She was a wonderful mom. She never once stepped foot in my classroom in the 80s. Did that negate her mothering? And so just seeing where these things are not universal truths. They might feel that way, but they're not true. And just allowing yourself to recognize that those rules are only as true as you believe them to be. Now, I did have someone reach out to me after and tell me that I shouldn't have had children if I felt this way, that I had no business being a mother and I sounded ridiculous and awful for preaching this. Now, this was someone who actually was a young person I knew in real life who does not have children. So that's maybe a side point, who knows my kids and knows me very well. And so because it wasn't just a random hater, I started asking questions about what makes you think this and just getting curious. And she told me within about 5 minutes, well, when I was a kid, my mom never showed up in my classroom and I felt really bad because I saw other moms. And so she was simply projecting her values onto me. She was saying, because it matters to me when I was a kid, it should matter for everyone everywhere. And this is
Mm.
how this happens, where people have opinions based on what is important for them, and then they project that onto everyone else. So never mind that as a working mom at the time had started my business, I don't want to spend time with my kids in their classroom. It's just, I don't enjoy it. It's not for me. But what I do love is travel. I love traveling with my kids, going on vacation. When I was a kid, we never traveled. So making money to spend money on vacations with our kids, that is our family's love language. Works for me, works for my kids. We love it and we spend time together. But I got to decide how I spend time with my kids. She gets to decide how she spends time with her kids some days when she has it. And that's the whole point, is we get to each individually decide what matters to us and how we show up for our families. And
Yeah.
guilt is when it's sort of universally applied. So looking at that, what do I believe? What am I believing? Who says? Do I agree with it? Did I choose this consciously or did I just absorb it along the way? So this is the beginning of just really paying attention. And that's
Yeah.
a long-winded way of looking at how kind of ridiculous all of this is.
I want to jump in there because there's a lot of things I want to reflect back. There was a lot of goodness in there, but one thing that I really want to reflect back is there's a difference between making an empowered decision, like you, Emily.
Mhm.
I know that I feel bad and it's not the way I want to spend my time with my kids to be in the class and having that be clean and empowered versus deciding against it, but still energetically draining yourself and beating yourself up.
Yeah.
Like then you're still giving your time and energy
Right.
away because you're in that secondary fog and you didn't even
Yeah.
volunteer, you know? And so I feel like that is nuanced but important for women to understand that like
It's I think it's actually everything, to be honest with you, because so many women, so the women that I work with, they want it all. They don't want to sacrifice. They want meaningful work, they want careers, they want time with their kids, they want everything. But the time, right? I don't have enough time. I don't have enough energy. But if we really looked at, and this may be something you to do, is look at how you spend your not only your literal time, also that, but your energy. Like one of the very first things that we focus on when women come into my world is we're going to cut your obligations and to-do lists in half by 50%. Because most of the time you are doing so much shit you don't actually want to do that you think you have to do. And even if you've cleaned up your calendar, you have energy leaks everywhere. And then that is exactly what you said. You're worrying about this, you're stressing about that, you're playing this conversation over in your mind, you're trying to manage this person's emotions, you're trying to impress this other person who doesn't even like you and you don't even like them, but you're worried about what they think. You're split in so many ways. When we can stop living for everyone else and being torn in a million parts, like we're, Harry Potter Horcruxes, like just all of our soul, like split all over the place.
oh,
Right? He has to like go back and
right.
all of those parts
Okay.
of his soul that he's split everywhere. Like when we come back to wholeness, holy shit, we can get a lot more done than we thought when we're living this fractured life and being like, how? I'll tell you how. You put yourself at the top of your priority list. You say no like a boss. You set boundaries like your life depends on it. You do the things that give you energy instead of taking it. And you get way more done with far less effort and your time expands exponentially. So we have to have all those pieces dialed in, or we're never going to create the lives we want to live. Like it's not possible.
I totally agree with you. You're speaking my language and the
Yeah.
Horcruxes. I haven't thought of Harry Potter for a long time, but that's spot on. I like it.
Yeah.
It's bringing it together. And I think so many women feel fractured. I think even living in this digital age where we're on demand, I think it's just add that layer of
Yep.
distraction and availability if you don't have the right boundaries. And I think it
Agreed.
exacerbates everything. So I know that whoever's listening to this sat up in her seat when you said the first thing we do is cut obligations and commitments by 50%. So, okay, I would look at that as if it's not a genuine, like, this is energizing for me, like, how can I release it? Where would you start with your clients? Because I think that sometimes we got to get a little practical.
We do. But you're not going to like it. So this is the thing. It's like sounds great, but it's a lot harder to do than it is to like rah rah around it. I
Right.
fully understand that, and I also am a big believer in you have the life that you want, and you have the reasons why you can't. And it is that simple. So you can fight for your limitations, which I believe you are very real, or you can fight for what you want. You have to pick what you're fighting for. And right now, many women are fighting for what they don't want because they don't feel empowered to actually do something about it. So we have to get back into our power of choice, the power of being in charge of our own lives and not being at the mercy of the rules and the perceptions and all of these things that we think are more powerful than us. So that's kind of the first piece is we have to decide we are creating our everything in our reality. We are creating our experience. If I ask a woman, what is your priority? She will tell me 10 things. But if everything is a priority by definition, then nothing is a priority, which is why it feels like you're pulled in a million directions and nothing is really changing. You have to have the courage to say that this is my top priority for this season. And that means these other things have to take a back seat, and that's okay. Things will move and evolve. So if this might be for a while there when I was starting my business was more important than my children. This was a priority. That doesn't mean I didn't take care of my children or that I didn't care about them, but I was clear on what came first for that season. I also had been a stay-at-home mom for 12 years where my kids came above everything else, and they got all of me for 12 years. By the time I started working on my business, they could take a backseat in terms of my focus. Doesn't mean I didn't take care of my kids, doesn't mean I didn't show up for them. But I knew when push came to shove what was the top of my priority list. And it is okay for so many reasons for us to do that. If I ask a woman what her priority is, she says all the things. If I say what matters to you, let me see your schedule. If your schedule does not reflect what your priorities are, what you say you value, I call bullshit. If it's not on your schedule, if it's not prioritized, if you don't do it, if you don't protect it, how many women have all of these things and then someone asks them to do something and they say, sure, and they just try to figure it out and then they cut the work out or they cut the date out or they don't get enough sleep. If you're not protecting your schedule in time, then it isn't up to you, it's up to everyone else, which is why your life doesn't feel like your own because you're not living for yourself. We have to get in the mindset of, I am in charge. And it might upset other people and it might challenge your beliefs and it might force you to face that little story that says, I'm not good enough and I'm not allowed. Good. That's the point. So we got to first take responsibility for everything in our lives, our commitments, our time, our energy. That is really the first piece. And then looking at what we just don't want to do. The simple things is, do you want to do it? If it's not a fuck yes, it's a fuck no in my world. Think about when you go in, like, I've heard this a long time ago and it stuck with me. When you go into a changing room and you're trying on an outfit, like, if it's not a fuck yes, it's a fuck no. Same thing with my time. If I get asked to go do something, volunteer for something, meet friends for a drink, I can love my friends and be like, I'm not feeling it today. It's a no. And that
Yeah.
standard raises the bar for access to me for my time because if I don't value my time and energy, no one else will. And if I don't treat my presence, my attention as an utmost top shelf priority, if I just give it away to anyone, the loudest, most demanding, if I'm reacting to I'm never going to build a life that I want. I'm never going to get anything meaningful done. I'm going to just be responding to fire and, over here and chaos over there and demand left and right. I have to become so good at protecting myself. And if you start doing that and you can do that, you will cut your time and energy and maybe not 50%, that's the goal, but you will free up so much more that is right there for the taking if you decide that you're going to actually allow yourself to do that.
I completely agree. And, my clients get nervous about saying no and practicing boundaries and all that. And it takes practice. But
Yep.
when you're really clear on what you're calling in, and like you said, what your priorities are, and you've got it like mapped out on your calendar, then when you get the random ask, you're also really clear on what's going.
Right.
Like if you're not clear on what the priority is and you're just like haphazardly, willy-nilly
Yeah.
agreeing to things, then you're not really clear on what you're not spending time and energy on. And I think that clarity piece is really
It's so
important.
big. And the other thing is like we've all heard like no is a complete sentence, which again is easier said than done. But one of the skills that many of us don't have, I know I certainly didn't until I had, is that we don't have to explain ourselves to anyone, including ourselves. Because I don't want to is a very valid reason. Sometimes we'll try to justify in our brain. Well, I'm going to say no because I didn't get enough sleep last night and I need to get more sleep tonight. And we like build this whole case like we need a good reason because I don't want to, because I do want to. These are the only reasons we need when we trust ourselves. And this is I could go on a whole rant on how we have been taught to actively distrust ourselves, to not believe ourselves, to gaslight ourselves, to listen to everyone but ourselves. Because our knowing, our intuition is the strongest, most powerful thing on the planet. When a woman learns to trust her gut, what she wants, her desires, without apology, without explanation, everything in her life will change. So being able to say, I don't want to, I don't have a good reason, I don't need a good reason, I don't want to, I'm not even going to argue with myself about it, that is liberating. That is owning your life at a level that we don't know that we're allowed to do. And that's what I'm here to revolutionize. I mean, that's why my brand is the Good Girl Revolution, because good girls ask permission to live their own lives. I'm not available for that. I'm not available to send that message to my daughter. I'm not available for my son to hear that message that women get to exist in service to them and that self-abandonment equals love. I will not teach that to my kids. So we have to be, as Glennon Doyle says, models, not martyrs. And this is the level of the bar that we are setting for everyone around us. We decide. Our children will not do what we say, as we know. They will be who we are. They will become who we are.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. What is something in your journey that took you a long time to learn that you really wish you could have grasped earlier? Because I know these things don't happen overnight. Like you didn't
Yeah.
become this empowered overnight.
Yeah. I mean, I don't do regret because I believe everything that you need will show itself to you on your journey. You will get, if you're willing. you've heard the saying, like, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I believe in like the divine breadcrumbs. We just get like the next right thing. So I do think everything in some ways, we kind of have to go through our own individual journey of unbecoming or unlearning all of this and finding ourselves. So with that caveat said, I think really just realizing that our identity is the driver of everything in our lives. Who we believe ourselves to be at a subconscious level will determine everything. Everything we say yes to, everything we think we're worthy of, everything we'll accept or allow, everything we'll go for. Our identity, really knowing who do I believe myself to be? And is that actually who I am or who I think I should be?
Tell me a little bit more about that because identity can be a squishy word for people. And I know that there's a lot of women, I think, especially when they have kids, that have so much going on in their life that
Mhm.
they sometimes over identify with their
Yeah.
roles. So I
Yes.
am mom or I
Yes.
am boss. And they put so much energy that they forget they're bigger. Who am
Yeah.
I outside these roles
Yeah.
I play?
Yes.
So I think that's what you were getting to a little
Yeah.
bit, maybe?
So at first, when I started this, my own existential crisis and journey, I thought, oh, I lost myself in motherhood, which certainly is the case for many women. But for me, and I also think for many women, I came to realize over time it's not that I lost myself in motherhood, it's that I never actually knew who I was to begin with. I knew who I was trained to perform to be. That word performance is really important because we perform at being good daughters. We perform at being good students, good workers, good wives. We learn to be in the world who the world wants us to be. The world will ask you who you are. And if you do not know, the world will tell you. And for many of us, we're looking to the world to say, what makes me lovable? What makes me worthwhile? What makes me successful? Who do you want me to be? And I will pretzel every part of myself into that so that you will pick me, so that you will choose me, so that I will be safe, so that I will be successful. This is the good girl path to success. And so if we're so busy spending our entire lives performing to some ideal that we think will make us valuable, we don't even know who we are. And then you add motherhood on top of that, which is like, there's no time to even have a thought for yourself. And so by the end of a couple decades of that, it's no wonder we feel lost in our own lives. So when I say identity, 100%, we are not the roles we fill. We are not the responsibilities we do. If I ask you who you are, you're going to say, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a teacher. We will list our job duties and our responsibilities and our roles. And that is not who you are because who you are can never be taken from you. So if your identity is motherhood, then what happens when your kids grow up and move away? If you identify with your job, what happens when you lose it? If you identify as so and so's wife, what happens if the marriage falls apart? Who are you in absence of all of those things? And if you do not know, then you are not living your life. You're living your life for everyone else. That becomes the most important work. Who am I really? Not who was I trained to be, not who I think I need to be, not even who I wish I was. Because for many of us, we're very aspirational, like we're ambitious, we're driven, we want to do better, we want to continue to grow and expand. And so we have this version of ourselves that we're like, once I stop losing my temper with my kids, and once I drop 20 pounds, and once I exercise more, and once I read more books, and once I'm kinder, and once I'm less bitchy. And like we have all of these things that we think we're aspiring to be. And I'm a huge fan of growth and making yourselves better and chasing your dreams. But all of that says, I will be more worthy when. And that does a huge disservice to the woman you are now. So, who are you really? Who are you when no one's looking? Who are you when you aren't trying to impress someone? Who are you at your core? And owning and knowing and believing that that woman is way more exciting, interesting, powerful than the one you're trying to become. That woman is who's going to take you to the life you really want, even if your brain says, I can't, I'm not good enough, I'm not ready. Like all of that is just your mind trying to keep you safe and keep you stuck. So, building a relationship with yourself and figuring out, like, who am I? If I were to take you and pick you up out of your life, out of your body, out of your family, and transport you into like somewhere, someone else, thousands of miles away in a different century, even, like, you would still be you. If everything else was different, but you would still be you. That is what I'm talking about. Like, who is that? Different parents, different everything. Yes, those situations and circumstances influenced you and shaped you, but that is still not who you are.
I'm curious. So, for the woman who recognizes that she doesn't want to wait to feel worthy of knowing herself a deeper level, how does she begin to bridge that in ways that honor the reality of
Yeah.
everyday
Yeah.
life?
So it's kind of like what we talked about earlier, the act of observing, of really becoming the gentle observer of, if there's you with, I like to say, like the capital. So Emily, like capital E Emily is like who I really am. It's my soul, it's my core of who I am. And then there's like Emily, like lowercase e, it's who I am in the world, my roles, my responsibilities, all of that. I say my human and my soul is kind of the way I like to differentiate it. Noticing the thoughts you think, the rules, the guilt, the shoulds, all of those things. Creating that space and noticing how you think is the first step. You don't have to believe everything you think, but you do have to notice it. So, what is your inner voice like? Is she always telling you you're not good enough? Is she pushing you to be better? Is she judging your desires? Just creating that awareness as a practice you can do all day, every day. Notice, notice, notice. Then the next most important piece is to build a deeper relationship with yourself, to rebuild self trust. So if you're in a new relationship, or let's say you had a breakup with, let's say you and your husband had a huge fight and trust was severed and there was a real fracture in the relationship and you took some time apart and you were going to decide to come back together, to work together, to build this back stronger than ever. What would you do to reestablish trust? Well, you would spend time together. And it wouldn't be performative. It wouldn't be while you're on your phones and half paying attention. You would be like spending time together. This is where journaling can be powerful, meditation, walks in nature. It doesn't matter really what you do, as much as you can be with yourself without distraction. And then start asking yourself questions, really asking questions and listening to the answer, not, yeah, that's not possible. I can't have that. Like, imagine you're with someone you love and care about. What would you ask? How would you listen? What would you say? Would you say, that's so stupid, you could never do that? Or would you say, I see why you want that. That sounds amazing. Maybe you don't know how to get there, but you can do that. Like, just talking to yourself in a way that builds self trust. And a lot of times women will say, well, I don't hear anything or I don't know. Well, think about it. The trust has been fractured. So you're demanding answers from your soul, and your soul is, she's always there. She's not leaving, but she's like, you won't even listen to me when I tell you to get a snack because you haven't eaten in 12 hours. Like, what makes you think I'm going to show up and let you extract and use me? I'm only coming back if we're going to do this for real. I'm only going to show up and start talking to you if you're actually going to listen to me and respect me. Because a lot of times women will say, well, I want to go to my intuition for answers. And she won't, I don't hear anything. Well, of course not, because you're just trying to sort of take advantage of her so you can go get something else and then discard her as this useless resource that just can fuel your ego's agenda to get ahead. And like, it has to be a serious relationship rebuilding. And when you think of it that way, you have access to the entire universe. You have access to intuition, ideas, the divine, anything and everything you can want lives in the stillness. It lives in presence with yourself. It lives in self connection. And so making that a priority will literally, if that was the only thing you ever did, it would change your entire life. We have a lot to do. And it is hard, minus some of the things we talked about earlier. Like, there's a lot on our plates, but we're just doing without knowing. And we get to knowing first by making the priority with ourselves, to know how our body speaks to us, to know how our emotions speaks to us, to hear our intuition, to build that self-trust so we know when to say yes and when to say no, what is worth our time and what isn't. Letting that become, and I'm a big fan of the rah rah, raise the bar, set your standards. I love all that stuff. But the reality is it's usually at the core much quieter and more certain than that, when your soul is just like, no. And if you slow down enough, you'll hear her. It's, no, I'm not doing that. I'm done with this relationship. I'm walking away from this person. It's just this steady, silent knowing. And the more you nurture it and the more you listen to it, the stronger and stronger it will become. And then it will lead you your entire life forever and ever. Amen.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the word that's coming to mind for me is dialogue. I think a lot of
Mhm.
women
Yes.
have gotten into the busy as a badge of honor, especially in motherhood, the martyrdom, the go, 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 the self
Yep.
sacrifice. And I agree. I don't think our inner knowing, our soul, whatever you want to call it, I think it just gets obscured because we don't have the headspace or heart space to maintain that connection. So
Yeah.
I really like how you compared it to, building a relationship just like you would build a deeper relationship with anybody else. And I also want to echo back something that I know has been true in my own life. There's so many people seems like they're just chasing their tails, and I hope women are inspired to get self-connected for deeper reasons, but I can't say enough that things just flow and you have much
Yes.
more time abundance. Like
Yes.
it's because you're moving in the right way versus
Yeah.
frantically.
Well, I think of it like I always explain it like if life is and you can take this as deep spiritually or as little as depending on what you want, well, what resonates for you. But if you think of life in general as like a river, right, and it's just always flowing, and we can look at nature to teach us this, right? There's seasons and cycles. In the most natural world, things are just happening; they're flowing. The tree doesn't need to know how the life cycle works and the seasons and it just is. Nature and the natural laws and orders are supporting everything. So if life is just lifing, it's just flowing. You can get in and you can put your boat in the river and you can like put on your favorite tunes and like your sunglasses and lay back and get a tan and let life carry you. And I know this is going to sound like infuriating, but truly, or you can get in the river and you can paddle upstream and when you're feeling that frantic energy, you're pushing against the current. You're moving against the way life wants to carry you. And it's the I can't, I need to, I should, I have to. It's control. Control is a huge piece in this. I always say there's like 4 success archetypes that really women use cling to get ahead or to feel safe. And it's one of them is the control freak. Like I have to control everything or else I'm not safe or it doesn't get done or it's not going to happen. The mother hustler is another where it's just like hard work, badge of honor. The basic bitch, which is just sort of, I'm going to have no personality, blend in, make no one mad, and just be agreeable. And then the good girl, which is kind of I'm just going to be the best I can possibly be. And like all of those are, we also have, many of us have a combination of those, but like this need to control and manage and all of that puts you at odds with the ease and flow you're seeking. And so learning how to stop the noise in your head. I mean, if you're like thoughts are going chaos, stress, that is such a red flag. That is not how it's supposed to be. Women bond over their shared misery. And just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. Just because everyone's suffering doesn't mean it's the way it's supposed to be. So it can feel really hard and isolating and lonely to think that you can do it different, which is why being in environments, being around people who are doing this work, daring to leave conversations in rooms where it's like we're bonding over how bad things are or how busy we are. We're competing for this like overwhelm Olympics. Like it is a culture that we have to separate ourselves from. So that part can be very hard. But just learning how, if it feels hard, you're doing it wrong. And I don't say that not because you're not enough or there's something wrong with you. It's because you're doing it against the way that is the most natural and easy. It's not supposed to be this hard. It's not.
Mm.
Life is not supposed to be this hard. You can be busy and not overwhelmed. Those are very different things.
This is going to give us so much to think about. I feel like I need to have you back on the show to dive into those archetypes in a more meaningful way at some point. But I want to make sure that we have time to end with a question. I always give my community a chance for reflection at the end of our
Mm.
conversation. So in this area of kind of ditching these good girl traps and claiming this life that is soul connected, what's one question women could be asking themselves more?
Just what do I want? I mean, it's really that simple. What do I want in every moment and every day? When you wake up in the morning, do you ask what I want to eat or do you tell yourself what you're allowed to have based on your calorie count for the day? Now, if your brain is saying, but I have to do that, but I have to, just notice that. Notice how quickly your mind wants to tell you why you can't do what you want. Just start observing. But what do you want? Even if you can't give it to yourself or don't know how, just notice it. Ask it and notice it. Just start there. And what you'll see is the gap between what you want and what you're allowed to have. And it is probably a chasm right now. And the work becomes closing that gap. And it doesn't happen overnight. And there's a lot of things in the way, a lot of things that we've discussed. But noticing the gap will be incredibly eye opening because all of your pain, all of your overwhelm, all of your resentment, all of your heartbreak, all of your longing exists in the gap between what you want and what you think you're allowed to have or what's possible. And so the work is closing that gap.
Thank you for sharing that beautiful reflection. Great place to close. Emilie, I know that women in my community will want to find you and learn more. Where can we connect?
Yeah, so I hang out mostly on Instagram, the Good Girl Revolution. That's really where I'm every day sharing and ranting and doing my thing. But my website, emiliekarun.com, I do have like a little audio series that breaks down those archetypes. I have like freebies, all kinds of stuff there. So they can come check that out. And just, I love emails, DMs, reach out and just connecting. So I'm here.
Wonderful. This flew by. I love all these topics. We covered beautiful territory. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my favorite thing ever to talk about.
I'm so glad you joined me today. If you're looking for more, feel free to connect with me on Instagram at @WhitneyWoman. And if you enjoyed the show, I invite you to support me by leaving a review or sharing it with a friend. Hope you have an inspired day.